see, check. Begin recording, sacred geometry class. It is September 8th, 6:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Thank you for joining us. This is Zoe at Lucid Distribution. And I have some lovely people here down at Sammy's spot. Sammy, thank you so much for having us. And thank you for having a place for the community to come and educate and enlighten each other in this crazy time. It sure is nice to find some places that aren't just riddled with social media madness, where you can find good people that want to have fun and learn stuff. You know, it's a real luxury. Okay, so sorry, it's kind of hard to see my mouse because that's such a big screen. So this was the design, my best-selling design. It's called the alignment, and of course, you have the Flower of Life, the Metatron's Cube, and all I did was combine them because the Metatron's Cube, will go through this, is born from the Flower of Life, and I'd never seen anybody just lay them over each other in a very basic way. And on my steel caps last year, we sold like 3,000 of them. And it's so funny because a lot of people don't understand why. We were just talking about this. What was your name again? Kenzie. So Kenzie and I were just talking about how there's something in our intuition, in our heart, that is attracted to not the complexity, but like the intricacy and the balance. There's something about it that just makes us feel good, right? But the brain, because there's so little education about sacred geometry, doesn't know why. So that's kind of like what we'll go over today. And like, there's very little education about this. There's like 1 or 2 videos, but yet people love it. And that's the good part. If you just think it's pretty, there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. But if you're like, hey, there's more to this. There's something they're not telling us, and you want to investigate and you want to go down the rabbit hole, that's what classes like this are good for. So, all right. So Gaia's Gift is a company out of Las Vegas. It's a really cool group of sound healers. Yeah. Wait a sec. Did I get that? Share. And so they're bringing this biophotonic glass from Amsterdam to the US. And so they hired me as like a consultant / artist, since I just finished with Vibe Bottle. So Vibe Bottle, my sacred geometry glass water bottle company that I started in my basement 5 years ago, that last year we had in 100 stores, and we did 100,000 in sales last year. So that's pretty good for a hippie. Not bad, you know. And the reason I like to talk about those numbers is I think it's easy to associate creativity, intuition, and artistry and being a hippie with poverty. But we live in this cool world now where you can live your purpose and you can be a contribution to society and you can be an artist. And if you crack the code to, online sales and business and stuff, you can kind of dabble in both worlds. And I've met a couple people that I like, like in Transformers, when like the aliens land, like the Transformers land and they don't have a form, and they like scan something and they're like, oh, now I'm a taxi cab, So like I did that to this guy. I met this guy he was obviously very wealthy, but he was also like a 3rd generation Peruvian shaman. And I was like, wait, you mastered the 3rd dimensional and the 5th dimensional realm? And I was just like scanning, copying, pasting. I was like, you can do that? And that after that, I was like, I've got to figure that out. And so, yeah, I share that because I want that to kind of be an inspiration to other people. I mean, obviously it's a lot of work, but we live in a world of 8 billion people now. So if you can get 0.01% of the population to enroll in your vision and purchase your products and support your business, that's like 8 million people. So that's pretty good. So these guys, they have this really amazing product, but they've just been born like 2 months ago. They're a very young company, and so I've kind of taken them under my wing to help them grow, and um, under the banner of Lucid Distribution, it just gives me another product to offer the world that I don't have to make. That's even better. Where's my mouse? That screen is so big that it takes like a while for the mouse to come over here. Okay, now I've got to open up my, let's see, where are you? Okay, don't be overwhelmed, okay? Don't look at this. Come on, baby. Oh, you're fine. Oh, cool. Oh, I see what I did. Okay, so I was just talking about how there's a certain group of geometric figures that fall into the family. That's what we're going to go over today. So before we go into that, I just want to go around the room, have you guys introduce yourselves, shut off my phone, and then just talk about anything that maybe has brought you here, maybe any experiences you've had and any questions you had, and then that kind of gives me an idea of which direction to go. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Let me shut this thing off. Okay, perfect. Okay, Sammy, you have to start because you're the host. This is your store.
Putting this together, like he said, we have been trying to get this together for probably close to a year, so I'm really excited for it. As far as sacred geometry, for me, it kind of started with, like you were saying, it was pretty. I like that it's organized. I like that it's symmetrical. And then, of course, I got into the crystals and found that using the sacred geometry to create my grids really just added to the power of it. I can make it without a decal, and it still functions, and it's still great. It's still powerful, but for some reason, when I add this sacred geometry to it, it just feels different. And then about a month ago, I was working with one of my spiritual guides, and she was taking me through some processes in healing myself and learning more about the metaphysical world and things like that. And during a meditation, spirit I was, like out in the stars, and I kept seeing the sacred geometry shapes. They would come in and then they would go out. And at one point, I actually saw in my mind's eye my body on Metatron's cube. And
which for who, if you guys don't know, it's this baby right here.
And
this guy.
I knew it represented something really, really powerful. I know that it's used in manifestation for grids, but there's just this part of me now that's just aching to know more, because I realize I see that everywhere.
Yeah.
When I was a nurse and I'm in the anatomy lab, I used to see.
So that's cool. You're a nurse.
Yeah.
So you've been very much in the, like, there's no room for like woo woo in a hospital. It's like everything is very regimented because it's life or death, right? So you're very much in the third dimensional side, which is the physical. Fifth dimensional is the energetic, and it's also like the root. You're very much in the rooted chakra. You're just like, this, doctors are not having any of it.
Yeah.
But yet, you continue to have these experiences.
Well, yeah, and then
it's crazy.
I noticed, this was before I knew anything about any of this, I would notice these patterns inside the human body. I worked in an OR a lot, so I saw the inside of bodies and the inside of different organs and the way they were designed and the way they're made up.
That's crazy.
And these shapes.
Now you're blowing my mind. Yeah, you just saw the same
In
things.
the human
Oh,
body.
that's
And
cool.
so then when I started getting into the woo-woo stuff and I started seeing these shapes, hey, that shape is over and over and over in the human body.
Yeah.
It's just.
You're in the OR. You're like, that's the seed of life. And they're like, what? I can't hear you. Nothing.
Exactly.
I'll YouTube it. Just save his life.
Keep going.
Put his heart back together, and then we'll talk about it in the break room.
Then I'll tell you.
We'll talk about it over soup.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I'm just super interested.
Cool. Well, cool. Thank you. I'm really excited to go more into it. I think you'll probably see more of that. And to your point, people, people talk about their experiences like on psychedelics or whatever, or people when they die and they come back to life. Right? There's a lot of the time it's the same chemicals on a biological level. The same things are happening. And they all seem to have similar, if not the same, experiences of seeing all these patterns and all these grids. I mean, this guy, a friend of mine, now a friend, but he came to my class. He didn't even know what this was, right? The Flower of Life. Thank you for conveniently placing that on your wall. And he had it tatted on his arm, but he didn't know it was called the Flower of Life. And I was like, wow. So, like a little in judgment, I'm like, wow, you really got that inked on your arm, like permanently, like, and you didn't even know what it was? He's like, yeah, well, I saw it when I died. I was like, oh, like I felt like the fool. He's like, yeah, I died and I came back to life. He overdosed on cocaine and he was pronounced dead. And 25 minutes later, they revived him. Yeah. And he's like walking around. And then he opened like a healing center. Like, yeah. After the class, about 2 years later, he opened his own place. So it's really interesting to see, like, why. That's the biggest question, isn't it? Like, why? Why is there any? It makes more sense that there's no order to things, but why is there order seemingly to some things and not to others? Or is that the case? Or is there order to all things, but we can't see it? Because we're so small and our architecture of our brain just doesn't, it's not wired to understand that anymore than you could put an ant on the edge of, on a beach and be like, okay, there's a whole ocean out there full of animals and there's a whole ecosystem. And the ant would be like, I don't even understand what you're talking about, because it just sees the vastness of everything. So, but yet we understand. Like from a bird's eye view, we know that there's currents. We know that certain animals live here and certain animals live there. And certain animals go upstream to die every year. Like we see the cycles because we've been able to see it over time. And an ant can't because there's only so much time. So it's possible that all things are in order, but we just can't see that because we're too small. Okay, Tim.
So I'm Tim, and I have started to unleash my artistic side a little bit. I'm a computer developer and hide in my dungeon like a vampire all day. And I've started to branch out and do some other things. And I have seen, in the same way, I've seen this stuff just start to appear everywhere.
Cool.
And so I'm just like, I need more. So that's why I'm here.
Sweet. Cool, man. Yeah. Heck of a. How long have you been in IT? I mean, since I've known you.
Yeah. Since
And you were talented back then.
right after Columbus discovered America. And
Yeah.
that's kind of when I started.
That's when you learned Pascal.
Yeah. So in the 90s,
Cool.
started in IT.
So you've seen it all.
Just been
And
doing
you've
that
seen
forever.
You've seen a quantum leap in technology then.
Yeah, I mean, and right now I play with AIs. So I'm
Cool.
building software that thinks and that can learn and starts to grasp language. and see patterns in language. And so here I am all day long looking at these patterns,
Right.
and I just see them everywhere.
Right.
And so I want to.
So you'll probably be able to tell me some stuff. That's what I want. That's really what this class is. I'm gonna find a way for you guys to teach me things. That's cool. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Hi, I'm Kenzie.
Hi, Kenzie.
And I really have been on a cool journey the past, I would say, like 2.5 years. But specifically the past like month since I came into Sammy's shop, and I've been coming here pretty much every day that it's been open since, and just enjoying the energy and learning. And I came to the crystal class, learning about crystal energy healing weeks ago.
Like the grid.
And then I did, yeah, they showed us some grids, and I learned a little bit about sacred geometry, and I was able to come in. Yeah, I got one of the water bottles that are being sold here and stuff. That you're the one that made.
I'm the guy.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, so that I was like double checking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just like really have learned a tiny bit. So I'm really excited to learn more about this. And yeah, I told you a bit earlier, but I guess for everyone else, just like I really love nature and science and space and stuff like that. So just, after being told the names of like, this is what this shape is called, and this is what this shape is called, or geometry patterns and things, I have been recognizing them everywhere. Like you guys both have said, I'm like, wow, right, they're all over the place. And so it's been cool and excited to learn more about them. So I feel like my brain puts things together really easily. My brain like metaphors really easily and different things connect.
Connections.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what's cool about the other thing about sacred geometry that I don't necessarily see on the internet a lot is the visual representation of philosophy. Yeah. So that's the part that I'm really interested in, is actually the organic or human side of sacred geometry. There is a very philosophical component to it that really I haven't seen anybody really explore. That's the part that I'm probably the most fascinated by, because it's like you say, I mean, we've all had a train of thought, right? And I mean, a train of thought in its simplest form is actually described as like a line with a series of segments, which, I mean, if you really think about it, it's like that's how Morse code works. Like language is very much reflective of our, how we think or whatever. But that's like a train of thought. That's like one thing. How do you illustrate like how a mind really works? Where it's like multi-dimensional and there's all these facets, and there's, oh, well, this is how my physical being, which is its own thing. I mean, just physicality talking. You're just talking about exercise, diet, sleep, whatever. That's a whole world, right? There's a whole industry just about that, just about physical being. Now there's a whole other industry that encompasses mental health, mental well-being. Okay. Now there's a whole other industry, and we're talking the globe, right? You're talking millions, if not billions, of people are just focused on this thing, right? Physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, right? Environmental health, financial health, relationships, right? There's entire bodies, countries, people dedicated to these concepts, and all of those concepts exist within you. So how do you illustrate something like that complex? Like, this is a good way to do that, is to be able to put all of those worlds that exist inside of you into an understandable format. Yeah. It's extremely, like, if I could say that I live my life a certain way, it's through sacred geometry. It's like my relationship with it. I mean, it's like, it's literally all I do with my life. Like, I eat it, sleep it, breathe it while other people are going to work to be accountants and CEOs or whatever they do, Like that's what I'm doing all day. All I'm doing is making art or teaching classes or learning about it or dreaming about it or studying or talking to other people about their experiences. And just like after like 10 solid years, I have yet to find the bottom of this rabbit hole. Like it just keeps going. It's just, and then you meet people with different perspectives, you know? So it's cool. And I'm glad you're on your journey, and I'm glad that you came here along your way. This will be a good stop, because what I find, a lot of people have inspiration and they have they have their talents and their gifts, right? And that's, in a way, that's like considered divine feminine energy. And that's kind of um, like a baby as it's forming. It's like pure feminine energy as it's like from the moment of conception. And as time goes on, what happens over 9 months? Like it becomes form, right? These 2, 3, 4 cells that have no shape and no like real purpose, right? And they're very nebulous. This is like an idea. This is like pure, if you want to call it unlimited potential. And then at the end of 9 months, it's like, oh, well, here's the form, and this is the end of it. And then it finishes in 5 fingers or 10 fingers, 10 toes, 1 head. Ideally, that's the form that we want it to take. So that's like being able to watch energy move from a feminine into a masculine form. Isn't that interesting? And that's the difference between the flower of life and the Metatron's cube. So the Metatron, the feminine, is the flower of life. So it's like this unlimited potential. There's no straight lines, right? The Metatron's cube is only straight lines. So these circles they don't belong to the Metatron's cube. They're borrowed from the flower of life. Yeah, so you have to extract those 13 circles, copy and paste them over here, and then you have to join their epicenters. And the Metatron's cube is born from the flower of life. So the flower of life is the core, like, template for all things, but it has no form. And then the Metatron's cube is pure form. Like, if you want to go back into the creation of the universe, it's like at one point it was an idea. It was like pure unlimited potential. And then they call it the Big Bang, or the moment of creation. Doesn't matter. Whether you're a creationist or a scientist, there was nothing and now there's something. So this would represent the unlimited potential. It was just this formless energy. And then it explodes into form, right? And it goes, right? And then after billions of years, all of the gases cool, and then stars start to form. And then from that, planets start to form. So this pattern of creation starts with the universe, and then it continues over and over and over again. I mean, where are stars born? They're born in clouds. Like, look at this. This thing looks like what? Like, this thing looks like a cloud. So stars, same thing. Start from without any form and then become form. Humans, we think about us like we're this, like if you believe in souls, we have like this unlimited formless energy that we have no idea if it's real or not, but we have a pretty good intuition that it is. And then you have this body. So everything is energetically created first and then physically second. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about a business or building a bike or a rocket ship. A rocket ship is when you have an idea, right? And its first step of creation is putting it on paper. So you've taken it from thought to paper. So it's gotten from feminine to masculine. And then you're like, oh, well, we need to mine some materials. We need to get people. We need to get plans. Like, we need to take this idea and make it real. And that's how you build a rocket. And you can't do it without either. You can't create anything without masculine and feminine energy. Just like you can't make a baby out of just an egg or just a sperm. And like, what does an egg look like? Flower of life. What's a sperm? It's a straight line. So that's what this is. That's what the Metatron's cube is. Oh, that's literally the recipe for creation. So if you're, people want to ask, well, how do I use sacred geometry in attaining my dreams and my goals? Like, I've probably run into a wide array of people, right, in this class. I want to make sure I'm sharing this screen. Does it have a little thing around here?
Did for a second.
It did for a sec. I gotta try something. I'm gonna do it like this, okay? Oh, it says my external display is disconnected, but it's not. Okay, I think it's working. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole. We need to finish going around the circle because I get too excited. There's a reason I call myself the sacred geometry geek, okay? Because I geek out, so I digress.
So I'm Joey.
Hi, Joe Eden.
Just starting down the path, and this is one of the things that's presented itself in front of me. So I'm going to see what I'm supposed to learn from.
Perfect. And you work here at the store, and you love it here.
Love it here.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you for being
I
here.
serve here this time.
You serve in great ways. Okay, thank you. Okay, so where was I? We were down the rabbit hole.
Introduction to the rabbit hole.
Into the rabbit hole. Yep, that's how it goes. Okay, so before we go too far down that rabbit hole, I'm going to give you guys the simplest explanation that I know how. And it's something that you can use when people ask you. Okay? Are you familiar with the idea that colors are just different vibrations of light? Right? Are we all familiar with that idea? So purple is one frequency, blue is another, red is another. Right? Okay. And sound, what are different notes? Different frequencies, right? So some are high and some are low and some are somewhere in between. Okay. All sacred geometry is different frequencies of sound in visual form.
So, on the chakra flags,
Mm-hmm.
they're all a different color, they have a different note, and they have different
Symbol.
symbol.
Yeah, they all have different geometry, yeah. And what's interesting is, so chakra means wheel, and the circle is, there's a reason why these guys are here, okay? Because a wheel is sacred geometry. I mean, look at atoms, right? I mean, it's literally in the fabric of matter. So when you start to go down that rabbit hole of transcendental experiences, they describe the chakras as flowers, right? Petals of flowers. It's like, well, what else were they going to call it? Before geometry was an actual subject, what else were they going to call it? Right? So they were probably seeing things like this, but they didn't know what else to call them but other than flowers. So that's why all of the chakras have petals around them. And the lotus is the unfolding. It's the chakra, the crown chakra is the 1,000 petal lotus that's ever blooming. Are you guys familiar with that description? Did you know that?
I didn't know that. I've seen the ones on the lot.
Yeah. So each of the chakras have different petals, right? It just so happens that I had, where are my, okay, swatches. So this is all of my art in one file, like all of the stuff that I've done. Every single one of these has been remastered as a vector from scratch. Okay, so here, see? Oh, perfect. So notice they have different numbers. Yeah, because they coincide with different frequencies. Yep, so you got it. So the chakras are really incorporating all three. They have a different sound, a different color, and a different geometric counterpart. But how did they know that like 5,000 years ago? This is where things get crazy. How did they understand like the mechanics of sound and physics when like history tells us we're supposed to be using copper tools and barely inventing the wheel. But yet these guys have this inherent knowledge of the way everything works down to the atomic level. You got to start rethinking history when you start seeing what they knew. When we start unraveling it, we get into our laboratories and we're just like, oh, like we're figuring this out in 2020, but like this has been etched in stone for 5,000 to 10,000 years. So there's something about history they're not telling us, basically. So just like you have different colors and different sounds, you have geometry is really just man's label for a natural phenomenon, right? So yes, we created geometry, the subject, but we did not create geometry, the phenomena. Geometry, the actual form, shows up in nature, and it showed up in matter and light and sound before we were ever a thought. So geometry, as sacred geometry specifically, has existed since the dawn of creation. And then after we're gone, it will still be here. So that's what sacred means. It means untouched, it means unchanged. So if you were to look at the periodic table of elements, the thing that makes up all matter, all of the elements fall into one category of one of the platonic solids or another. So in a way, it's just like little Lego blocks. And when you look at like chemistry chains, you notice how they're all like hexagons and straight lines. Yeah. So it's like whoever came up with this simulation we're living in, known as the universe, was like, hey, I'm going to make this really cool program system that you can pretty much you can put anything together and you can get new stuff. But you don't have to change the original thing. So I can take this thing and this thing, hydrogen and oxygen, and that makes water. This and this, that makes steel. And this makes plastic. So the actual elements never change, they stay sacred. But you can stack them on top of each other to make an unlimited amount of materials. So that's how smart whatever came up with this universe, that's how smart that being was. They figured out a way to make the universe stable, but infinitely changing at the same time without it collapsing in on itself. That's a lot of work. Like that's mind work right there. And so here's like the proof. So all they did was take sand and throw it on a metal plate, and they have a speaker underneath, changing the tone. So notice how it's symmetrical by nature. And then the next thing to notice is, as it goes up in tone, you'll notice it becomes more complex. And then you'll notice between tones, you'll notice that it's chaos. Isn't that weird? So here's the thing. Why do we like, as a species, why do we like certain tones? You ever wonder that? Like, why do we, like when you listen to a song on the radio? Yeah. Yeah, probably. But isn't that weird that we're all, like every single human on Earth, they all have the same thing in common. We all like rhythm. Like we all listen, we all have a rhythm, right? So there's like a certain vibration that we're all attuned to by nature. Like since we were banging on sticks and logs. And then when it comes to singing, we like certain notes. When we hear a note and we hear somebody's off key, it kind of like makes you feel weird. You're like, that doesn't sound good. But why? Like, who's to say? Why isn't that note just as equally pleasing as this note? So it might be because a certain vibration causes disharmony, which is, I mean, it's literally in the word, like harmonic vibration. So harmony, that's like peace, and disharmony is associated with chaos. So we have, as a species, we have a natural affinity for harmony. Is that interesting? I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So some of them look like, ripples in the ocean. Some of them look like amoeba. Some of them look like cells, like in your body. I mean, and there's this one in particular. Oh yeah, right here. Look at this thing. Okay, now this is really weird. Okay, does anybody recognize this symbol? Does anybody know what this is? Look at this. Look at this. Anybody know who the Incas are? Look at this. Look at this thing. Look. What are the chances of that happening? Yeah. Look, it has it has all the same steps. But remember, these are supposed to be cave people. Like, oh, we were just like knuckle draggers back then. We didn't, but yet they built these monoliths that we still can't build. So this is a frequency of sound. And like the seed of life, the flower of life, those show up when you do this same thing to water. So again, geometry is not man-made. It's literally how everything came into form. That's pretty cool. And it gets, now here's this is a higher frequency. So notice it gets more complex and you have straight lines and circles. And then it just goes bonkers, right? So that's the difference you're going to find. That's the difference that you're going to see between these. Straight line, circle, platonic solids, Merkaba, seed of life, Metatron's cube, flower of life. They're different frequencies. And just like a crystal, all the crystals in your store have different frequencies. And essential oils have different frequencies and sounds, like your crystal bowls over there. Each one performs a different function, right? So do these. These can all be used in practical ways in parts of your life to do certain things. That's what's really cool. Not just crystal grids. Crystal grids are a very good way, though. Very good utilization. And I'll go into those. If I forget, remind me. So does that give you a little more, like, very, like, the simplest idea of how they came about? Because it's like, who decided this one was, well, who decided the cube was cool? You know, like, who's this Plato guy, and why does he think he's so awesome? Like, why did we decide on the icosahedron, or the, you know? And it's like, oh, because we didn't decide. We discovered them in nature. And then for some reason, like, they kept this particular shape, the dodecahedron, for whatever reason, they kept this one a secret. Yeah, so like a lot of the stuff, that's the other thing about the cool, like the information age we live in, a lot of the stuff we'll talk about today, was like privileged information. Like, we're in the information age now. If you wanted to, say, learn yoga 100 years ago, you had to go to India, you know, or if you wanted to learn what Stonehenge was about, you had to go and study under the Druids. And I mean, now you just download it. Like, what was hidden from people for so long is now just out in the open. But we're also being exposed to a lot of misinformation. So the upside of working with these all the time, I get to sort of discern the difference between what this one does and what this one doesn't, and what the internet says it does and what it doesn't really do in real life. Okay. Do we have any questions so far?
When you said that essential oils have a different
Frequency. Yes.
scents or just essential oils?
Yes, to both of those. Yes. Yeah, I mean, smells themselves have frequencies, but I believe that, like Gary Young, the guy who founded Young Living, who just passed away, I believe he actually had a whole, like, catalog of which oils had what frequency. But I'm pretty sure he didn't share it with the public because they were going to think he was nuts. And he was. But the marketing department kept the crazy in the basement. You know, that's what they do. And they're like, okay, thanks, Gary, but we're going to take your, like, hot selling product and we're going to make you a billionaire. And then you just go out, play in the field. And he's like, okay. And that's how it worked out. But yeah, if you were to talk to him and delve into that with him, he would absolutely be like, yeah, this frequency, this is a 44 megahertz oil, and this one's 56, and this one's 78, and this is what this cures, and this is what this cures. He was big into it, yeah. Yeah, he knew. He knew stuff. Okay. So this guy, let's start here. Now, right out of the gate, I talked about the Metatron's cube and the flower of life because these are the most recognized. These are the most used, okay? But these are also like the big kahunas. They're like the grandma, grandpa. They're the top of the food chain. They're the most complex, the highest vibration, whatever you want to call it, okay? If you want to start at the basics, you have to understand the circle and the line. So like we did a little bit, delved into the masculine and feminine, how they work together to create, and we can't create without it. Let me show you how these contribute to the other shapes. Do-do-do, pop, pop, be-do-do, pop. Ignore all that. Do-do-do-do. Oh, really quick, these are the platonic solids. This is how the, when you look under the microscope and you see the way the atoms are arranged in the periodic table of elements. Cool, huh?
Can you just say a little bit about what the platonic solids?
So the platonic solids, they were discovered by Plato, hence the name Platonic. Has nothing to do with dating or just being friends. So they have to meet a certain requirement, and those are all the shapes of each side have to be the same shape and size. All of the lines, like this line and this line and this line, all have to be the same length, and all of the inside angles have to be the same angle. So just like 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, right? 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. 1 times 2 times 3 is 6. There's not many more numbers you can do that with. There's really just a contained number of sets. Same thing with these shapes. You can only have so many shapes that have the same sides, same angle, same size. And so Plato figured this out on his own, and then it wasn't until later did we discover that matter fell into the same template. So pretty smart people. That's how you know they're wicked smart. My mom. I'm teaching a class, Mom. Okay. And this is just like fun. This is like a nice visual. So it shows you, this is the like vector. I work in vector graphics. That's why everything's in Illustrator. And I do so because it's literally perfect. And then you see things like star formation, cell formation. This is called cellular meiosis. Mitosis is in plants, right? I think. So cellular mitosis is when plants, like when cells divide, but inside of plants, inside of a person, it's meiosis. And it just kind of goes to show that we really do live in a fractal universe. Like what's happening on Earth, as chaotic as it is very patternistic. So our behavior, a lot of people won't really believe this until you show it to them, but our behavior is very patternistic. There's a reason why you meet the same guy over and over again. You leave a job, she laughs. You leave a job, you have the same problem. You move town, you have the same, you meet the same type of people. They, if you believe in reincarnation, there's a reason we keep, history keeps repeating itself. I mean, history repeats itself. That's a cliche, is it not? Yeah, it's not random. It's because everything exists in some sort of fractal. Some sort of template is always running, and then we're just having like a new experience inside of it. And then when we raise our vibration and we escalate like our education, our knowledge, and we ascend our point of view, oftentimes through experience, then yes, we have largely the same experience, but we have a new way of looking at it, and that's how you can like transcend karma and space and time, things like that. That's the whole reason. It's not just for entertainment. There's a reason why like everybody in this room is like, yeah, I keep seeing the same thing. It's like, so how do I gain knowledge over this? And by gaining knowledge over it, it's like, okay, now I can start to utilize it, and I can start to kind of grow, and expand. So yeah, one of the major things that separates us from animals is that we see patterns. Okay, so this is fun. Going back to our line circle thing. So look how symbolic just a line really is and a circle is. This was just a fun discovery. I was like, oh yeah. So duality, as often described, is some sort of egoic human creation. Yet it shows up in nature. Like there's the North and the South Pole, and there's the positive and negative side of a magnet, and there's the positive and negative side of a battery. So yes, the ego can polarize things, but it doesn't mean it isn't a part of nature. So it's good to make those distinctions. The feminine and masculine, you have the egg and the sperm, organic, inorganic. So organic is like when you go out to the woods, you don't see a straight line. Do you ever? I mean, if you're lucky, you'll be like, oh, look at this really straight stick. Like, there's one, but the rest of it is just sort of like free flowing, And then you come into the city and everything's in straight lines and grids. Creativity. So creativity has no real direction. Creativity is like, it's about meditating and allowing things to flow. They call it brainstorming for a reason. Creativity is about being everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And logic has no time for your creativity, you darn hippies. Okay? Logic wants to know why and where we're going and when we're going to get there. And it's funny because these are visual representations of like people we know, but also aspects of ourselves. Spirit and ego. So spirit is very much like inclusive to all things. You know, like we are all one. You've heard that. That's what spirit is about. It's about connection and inclusion. And ego is all about separating. It's just like, okay, well, this is my side of the fence and that's your side of the fence, and I'm right and you're wrong and you're this and I'm that, and you're gonna vote for this guy and vote for that guy. This one's really fun. What do you guys think this one means? I'm just curious. How do you interpret these? The planetary and meteoric.
Well, generally speaking, meteors sit on a vector,
Mhm.
so they're traveling in a line. Whereas planetary bodies are spinning around each other, and so they find themselves in those orbits. Well, we look at those orbits, and that's too that's not our orbit, but it's still a circular shape.
It's an ellipse. It's an ellipse. Yeah, it's a circular motion. Isn't that interesting? So again, it shows how in nature these really basic things show up. There's not very many things. I mean, if anything is going like this, it's probably man-made or alien. It's like things that are zigzagging, you know? Or if you were to get literal, when you combine the circle and the vector, the line, you have a spiral. Right? And that's really how our solar system is traveling through the universe. Is our sun is actually like a missile traveling through the universe, and we're spinning around it. So if we were to be leaving a smoke trail, we'd be leaving this like cool spiral throughout the universe. Isn't that neat? Traveling at the Earth is traveling at 60,000 miles an hour, and the sun's moving at like 1,000,000. I don't know. It's crazy.
And then that is rotating around the Milky Way,
Which is also hawking through space.
Yes, so it's actually the spiral on the spiral, the spiral, and the
Yes. Within a universe that's ever expanded.
yes.
Right? Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. So pretty neat. But again, all kind of falling into this basic template. There's nothing that's just out there bouncing around like a ping pong ball. Space and time. Pretty explanatory. Space is like a room and time is linear. Like we have the present, the past just happened, the future is happening tomorrow. That's how it's explained to us. I think we know the time isn't, but that's how it's viewed. Cycles and relationships. This is like a whole class in itself. But when you look at the Metatron's cube in a philosophical way, it represents pretty much like every experience you'll have in your entire life. Because there's never a time that we're not in some kind of cycle, and there's never a time we're not in some sort of relationship. And those things, two things, will probably teach us more about ourselves than anything. Is what keeps showing up in your cycles, right? And how do you break out of those? And how do I keep showing up in my relationships? And how I show up in my relationships says a lot about me as a person. So as far as self-development goes, you could take that snippet and build a whole online course for it. It's crazy, huh? So spirituality and science, we're just on the circle of the line. We're not even at the seat of life yet. Spirituality and science, again, very much like, holistic on one side and very like dividing on the other. And they both have their roles. That's the thing. There's not good or bad. Science just has its role. It has its role to determine the difference between fact and fiction, and phylum, species, things like that. Now here's where it gets really fun. So this is where, like I said, it gets into our language. Circles and lines have made themselves into our language. So the Morse code, the first, wired long distance communication that we ever came up with was dashes and dots. And then, of course, we became way too advanced for that. And now we're outsmarting nature, and we create computers. And what is our code literally written in? Ones and zeros. Yeah, the digital age. Every video, every selfie, every message that you've sent in the last 10 years was encoded in ones and zeros. Pretty crazy.
And that's energy and non-energy. Ones and zeros represent on or off.
Mm-hmm.
So it's energy or lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
Absence of it.
Right. And if you do it as, because that's how a computer works, a switch, right? On and off, billions of times a second. That's also if you want to describe Genesis meaning creation from nothing. There was nothing and now there's something. Bing. Like energy off, energy on. Creation. That's what I get jazzed about. That's my most favorite thing. That jar didn't exist. Now it does. Like, there's nothing that gets me higher than just making stuff out of nothing. I was on the phone with my son when I was designing this. Like, I wasn't in some like intense, like, focused concentration. I was just flowing and putting things together. And I was like, okay, it's like this is not just going to be my next bottle. I'm like, that's going to be the logo for my next company. So this is where it becomes practical. It's not just aesthetically pleasing, but this holds a lot of representation for me. It has all of the elements, and the elephant itself. It's strong, it's powerful, but it's also a very kind and wise animal. And what's really fun is when you take geometry, which is very logical and very left-brained, and you scoot it all the way over to spirit animal land, like the most abstract. It's not even an animal, it's a ghost of an animal. Like, it's the weirdest thing you could possibly come up with. So I took the most logical thing and the most abstract thing I could possibly put together and married them, and it worked. That was pretty cool. I was pretty excited about that. And I just keep going down that rabbit hole as well. I've created a phoenix, I've created a butterfly, I did a wolf, and my next one will be a turtle, a sea turtle. That one's going to be fun. Okay, so now you have this guy. It's known as phi, right? The golden ratio. And the golden ratio, look this up sometime. It's its own video. It's its own YouTube video of how the golden ratio shows up in the human body. The golden ratio shows up in the Egyptian pyramids. It's how the pyramids were built and how they were arranged is within a golden ratio of the planet, which is in a golden ratio of the sun. It's a whole thing. So now we're going to skip past these guys. This is where sacred geometry is born. Like these, look at this. All they did here was take two circles, okay, and overlap them. Right? So we were just talking about one line, one circle. Now we've taken one circle and we've doubled it in energy. So now you have the Vesica Pisces. Well, what's significant about that? Well, now you have points you can start drawing a line to, right? Vectors. And immediately you're going to see symbols that are very well known in the world. So this is where the pagans, namely the Wiccan culture, this is where you get the pentagram from. It's not a symbol of evil. They use it for protection, and it's geometric. And then what do you have here? The David Star, which is like the symbol for Judaism all over the planet, which is also the star tetrahedron, which we'll get into. So these guys are using, how old are those symbols? This is dawn of time stuff, And it's funny how many of people in the cultures would allow themselves to be represented and not knowing the origin, not knowing that it was like built out of time or out of sound. Okay. So the spiral. So now the spiral is born when you're combining the circle and the line. Okay. Isn't that interesting? So it's not exactly how the choker ray looks, but that's the basic idea, right? That's like the basic form of the choker ray. It's a circle. It's a masculine feminine combination of energy. So the yin and yang, which we have all been familiarized with since we were young, not only do you start to see the polarity, right? Polarity is absolutely key. Even though we don't like dark, it's part of this world, whether we like it or not. And it brings about a different quality and dimension to interact with. So what we haven't been told is that it is actually a two-dimensional representation of the torus. Does anybody here know what a torus is?
Yeah, I know what a toroidal is.
Or toroidal field? Okay. Ladies, have you seen a torus before? I don't mean the car. Ford Taurus, yeah, I had one in '85. No, okay, so meet the next member of the family. Okay, the torus is a one-sided shape that's it's collapsing and expanding in on itself all the time. And so because they didn't have a way to represent the three-dimensional version, they presented us the two-dimensional, which is the yin yang. And that's what the holes are. That's what those two circles are the connecting into the center. Isn't that crazy? Yep. And this is just this is a torus, but this is like, they're all represented in different ways because people see it in different ways. Isn't that cool? And I have an animation. You'll see.
So you're gonna have to create a rocket stove now, just to create a toroidal flame.
That's true.
Which is amazing. It's like the coolest thing ever. So the flame shoots through this tube, and it shoots up and it hits a plate, and then you get a toroidal flame on the top.
What?
That burns.
How?
It's the most amazing. It is the most amazing thing.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, and
it's not like an F. It's not like an F-35 jet. It's
no,
like
no. It's like just the heat itself causes the motion of the air, which ends in a toroidal flame because the gases, the wood gasifies as it goes, and then when it hits that pinnacle, it starts to fold on itself,
and then it maintains itself.
An additional burn.
Wow.
And so that's where actually all of the power of the fire that's generated sits. It's right in the torus.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
What? Oh, I gotta see this thing. I gotta see this thing.
I will send information.
Thank you. Please do. Yeah, look at this. So here's a low-key example. There's a torus right there. So dolphins, like the smartest creatures on earth, they know how to create them and they play with them. Yeah. That's gnarly. So that's like a very simple explanation of how a torus works. So do you see how by the fact that it rolls in on itself is how it keeps its form? Okay. So put a pin in that. Okay. Keep that. Freeze that in your mind. Okay. Where do they start to show up? Yeah. I mean, if you cut a tree right in half, you can look at its roots and its trees or its branches and everything. You can see the way that all of that is actually connected. And it's because it's following the template of a toroidal field. And if you want to go real hippie, go out to the woods and stand about, if it's a 20-foot high tree, stand about 20 feet away and walk real slow towards it with your hands like this, right? It's called entrainment. And you can actually feel this like aura. It's really weird. And this is also, so like the Vesica Pisces I was talking about, within a forest, when you have these trees that all of their toroidal fields are overlapping, they can communicate with each other. So they can pass on information. And in fact, they found it in like the fungal growth of the forest floor, that they've discovered that these trees are literally communicating with each other. They can pass information on. They're like, these trees 100 miles away can be like, yo, there's a fire here. Like, and they'll respond. It's insane. So where else does it show up? Blood cells. Where else does it show up? Magnetic field of a human being. So this is measurable. Our brain has a toroidal field, and our heart has a toroidal field. Our electromagnetic toroidal field of our heart is like 1,000 times more powerful than the one in our brain. So if you want to start going down the law of attraction rabbit hole, like this would be the prime signal, like the prime wave you're talking about that we're putting out. So this emotional frequency that we're on when it comes to attraction and creation, attraction is feminine, creation is masculine. Yeah, so that frequency that we're on will change what we attract and what we create. The simplest form that I like to, because I teach the law of creation. I believe in the law of attraction, but I don't think that's all there is to life. Like if I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm thirsty, do I just wait for a bottle of water to float to me? No. Like I'd love that. That's attraction. But no, I form an idea, and a path, and then I go and I make a plan and I execute. And then I go and solve the problem. That's creation. So whatever frequency I'm on, like when I paint a picture, will change what colors I use. So our manifestations in our life are reflective of our frequencies. So it's why it's important to make ourselves feel good. And in healthy ways. So yes, we have a magnetic field, measurable. The Earth has a magnetic field around it. Is everybody aware of this? Right, this keeps us from dying. I call that rather practical. That's pretty useful, not dying.
It also makes really pretty things happen.
Yes. So when the sun shoots charged particles at us, they get caught in the upper and lower entrances of the torus, and that's where the northern lights come from. And if it wasn't for this magnetic shield, we would die. So 1% of all UV light that comes from the sun touches the earth, and that's what burns your skin within 8 hours. So imagine if 2% or 3% came through. This is why they're also professing to use UV light to kill bacteria and viruses, because it kills everything. So thanks, Mother Earth. Props to you on that one. Thanks for the shield. So there's just like a wireframe illustration. That is a, is that a black hole? I can't remember.
That looks like a black hole drawing energy from
Like eating a white dwarf or something? Yeah. Yeah, so even black holes have a torus. I mean, they're just collapsing in on themselves, and then they have these jets of gamma rays. So we're talking all the way from your blood cells to the cross-section of an orange to a galaxy. So here, everything again falls into these patterns. Isn't it crazy? And it's really funny when you try to explain to a human, when they're like, no, astrology's stupid. And you're like, everything else is a pattern. Why wouldn't personalities be? And even psychology agrees. They're like, well, there's 4 main types of people. So they can have patterns, but hippies can't. So just some really cool. So again, sacred geometry almost simplifies these really expansive ideas, and it does it in such a perfect way, a beautiful way. And you know what I really love about it? Nobody fights about it on the internet. You know? Like nobody's like, my flower of life's better than yours. Like it's like the one thing that people don't fight about as far as being a peacemaker is concerned. It's like geometry and math are pretty universal languages. That's what I love about it. It's very unifying. It's not a separating thing, you know? It's beautiful. And that's just like an artist's rendition of everything we talked about. And what's interesting is you take the T off of Taurus and you get auras. Oh, yeah. So there's something to that.
So we talk about auras.
Auras.
Color.
Your aura. Your bioenergetic field.
And so you think that colors that some people
Yeah.
talk about that, does that have to do, you think, with like the frequency that you're at?
Yeah, I do. So as above, so below. Right? You've probably all heard that. So I believe in science and I believe in metaphysics and I believe in spirituality. I believe they coincide. And I believe that when my serotonin on a biological level is firing at a certain level, that's my physical, that metaphysically my aura is probably a different color than when my serotonin is low and I don't feel well. I'm assuming my aura is probably reflective of that. It might be smaller, maybe not as bright, maybe it's a different color. I don't know. When it comes to metaphysics, humans are funny because we were so sure that atoms were a hoax. And you know, you try to explain bacteria to somebody back in the 1500s and they burn you as a witch, and you know, so on. Like Reiki is the cutting edge right now where they're introducing it to the hospitals and they're actually seeing measurable results. And we're talking U of U, Harvard, like all these studies, right? And the thing is like, if we can't see it, because meta means beyond, right? Physical means it's real, you know? So physical means real, meta means beyond. And so technically, atoms were a metaphysical concept before we had the math and the technology to see them, right? And so was bacteria. It was like this metaphysical, like how dare you make me think like something's crawling on my skin? You're freaking me out, man. But really, there's trillions, if not billions, of microorganisms living in and on our body every day. Now it's just knowledge. Everybody knows that. And so humans are really funny because we're dead sure that whatever you're talking about metaphysically is totally crap until you can see it. So now, my prediction is we're going to get some cool goggles someday where you can see people's auras. And then it'll leave the metaphysical realm and it'll become like a new branch of science. Isn't that interesting? And until then, we will be made fun of. So brace for it. We will be ridiculed, but then we'll be cool later. So keep the faith. Oh, this is just fun. So the patterns we're talking about, there's a reason why when people have their DMT experiences or they die and they come back to life, that they see these things, and it's probably because if this experience we're having is real or not, at some level there has to be something holding it together. So it would make sense that it would be either a flat flower of life or Metatron's Q pattern or both. Because if you just look at this is only a two-dimensional depiction, but your brain makes it alive, right? I mean, you stare at it and your brain will create, your brain will be like, oh, well, there's a huge cube and now there's a triangle and there's a pyramid, and you'll start to see depth. So there's a reason why geometry is used in the structure of the universe. It's because it's indiscernible. Like you can't see it even though you're looking right at it. It's like the perfect thing for, you know, if this is a giant video game, you know, you want to make it so people can't figure it out. But we're getting there. We're getting closer. And I mean, people are reporting glitches in the matrix like on a daily basis now. Have you seen? I mean, there's weird things going on all the time. Completely unexplainable things going on. I mean, people have footage of people appearing and disappearing, right? Or there's footage of like birds. There's like birds flying, and then like one will, like there'll be a flock of birds, and like one will stop, and the other ones will keep going, and then it'll like join up with the group, and wasn't hovering or anything. It just like stops. Like there's definitely, maybe there's so many people on the planet that it's like overloading the system. I don't know, but like when you talk,
Apparently, people are more aware.
maybe
So yeah, there's mechanisms for capturing that information.
right.
Because it's been reported forever, right? There's always been things that were reported that were bizarre.
Yeah.
But now we have the ability to actually record that and then share it.
Yeah.
Get this knowledge, this internet thing.
Yeah. This misinformation age. The upside is, we through if we don't accept everything at face value, and we actually take the time to study the things that interest us, then we can start to weed out what's not real. So it's kind of a hassle, but I found it to be pretty cool. You know, it's just like, don't just read the headline of the article. Actually read the article, and then do a little bit of background, and you will actually find there's a lot of cool things out there right now. But so many people like to read the headline and post it, and then they have no ground, and then they want to argue. So
Do your exegesis actually figure out what it means, what the data really says.
before you start throwing gloves down, I challenge you to a duel. About what? I don't know, this thing I read. I read the title of this thing, and it totally supported my biased views.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's why I love this stuff. I never get lost in conflict here. All I ever do is discover new things. So I have a quick video that breaks down the Platonic solids. It's fast, okay? So, and it's a cartoon, so even better. Flower life. Oh, I'm gonna do something really fun though. Look at this. Oh, scary, huh? Do you know what that is?
SDC.
That's the White House. And those are actual roads. And it's at the top of a pentagram. And that explains everything that's happening right now. Doesn't it? Isn't that crazy? So the Masons, like, they've been doing, they know what we're talking about. They've been living it, teaching it for thousands of years. That's what I'm saying. This is clandestine information. Yeah. And they've been building it into structures and roads since the dawn of time. And it's the same thing as a crystal grid. You see what I'm saying? On a global scale. They're doing their crystal grids over miles. Yeah. Fun little fact. Okay. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit.
Oh, see, it wasn't really a quick video. You're just gonna only show us part of
It's so fast. Even the. Okay. All right. I believe this is where we begin. Okay, let's start here.
I would love to show you. Back then, this image and knowledge was so sacred that they couldn't allow it to become common knowledge. It was appropriate at that time. However, someone either use the information or fall further into darkness. In biology, all cells have a zona pellucida around the edge. These circles around the flower of life are the zona pellucida of the flower of life. You must remove these. Then, complete the spheres that were cut off by the zona pellucida. With one more step, you will have the secret. Finish the drawing, add the final missing circles, giving you this. This image is the fruit of life. This pattern of 13 circles is one of the holiest, most sacred forms in existence. It's called the fruit because it is the result, the fruit, from which the fabric of the details of the reality were created. Remember when we talked about male and female energy in lesson 4? As you can see, this image is female. It has no straight lines. However, when you combine male lines with these female circles, something amazing happens. What you do is draw a straight line from the very center of every single circle to every other circle in this image. When you do this, you get an image which is known throughout the universe, everywhere, as Metatron's cube. It is one of the most...
Fun fact, meta means beyond, Tron means matrix. So Metatron's like feeding us cheat codes.
information systems in the universe. One of the basic creation patterns in existence. So what is Metatron's cube? Well, anyone who has studied sacred geometry, or even regular geometry for that matter, knows that there are 5 unique shapes in the universe, and that they are crucial to understanding both regular and sacred geometry. They are called the Platonic solids. A Platonic solid has certain characteristics by definition. First of all of its faces are the same size. For example, a cube, the most well-known Platonic solid, has a square on every face, so all of its faces are the same size. Secondly, the edges of the Platonic solids are all the same length. All edges of the cube are the same length. It only has one size of interior angles between the faces. The angle is 90 degrees. And fourth, when put inside of a sphere, all of the points will touch the edge of the sphere perfectly. With that definition, there are only 4 shapes besides the cube that fit that description. You have the dodecahedron, the tetrahedron, the isosahedron, and the hexahedron. All of these shapes are found within Metatron's cube. This knowledge is also where original alchemy came from. The ancient alchemists and great souls like Pythagoras, father of Greece, considered each shape to have an elemental aspect to it. The tetrahedron was considered fire, the cube was earth, the octahedron was air, the isosahedron was water, and the dodecahedron was heat.
Now, side note, the father of modern medicine, what's his name? Oh, Hippocrates. He used to diagnose his patients.
Father of modern medicine, Hippocrates, used to diagnose his patients based on what element they were. So he would treat them differently. And so those then became what other people believe to be aspects of our personality, which you can actually, I took the time to do this myself. I found the parallels between his system and like Carl Jung's psychology. And I figured out which elements correspond with what personality types we are. Yeah, so you can do a personality type test based on sacred geometry. Yeah, and how you interact with people will change. It's crazy.
Ether, also known as prana, and tachyon energy are all the same thing. They extend anywhere and are accessible at any point in space, time, and dimension. This is the great secret of zero-point technology. The sphere is voidness. These 6 elements are the building blocks of the universe, and they create the qualities of the universe. To summarize, this is the first informational system that comes out of the fruit of life through Metatron's cube. In alchemy, they rarely discuss ether. I've read that in the Pythagorean school, if you even uttered the word dodecahedron outside of the school, they would kill you on the spot. That's how sacred this shape was. 200 years later, when Plato was alive, he would discuss it, but only very carefully. This is because the dodecahedron is near the outer edge in your energy field, and is the highest form of consciousness. There's quite a bit more here, but I don't think I can go much further on it right now. Anyways, recognize this? The periodic table of elements? Every single element on this table has a geometric relation for one of these 5 shapes. Modern scholars ridiculed this idea until the 1980s, when Professor Robert Moon at the University of Chicago demonstrated that the entire periodic table of elements, literally everything in the physical world, is based on these same 5 forms. In fact, throughout modern physics, chemistry, and biology, The sacred geometric patterns of creation are being rediscovered. Another example is the egg of life that I showed you earlier. Hopefully that will help you to understand just how incredible and important of a discovery this truly is. Everything that modern science knows about the elements and reality are tied together to the platonic solids, which come out of Metatron's cube, which is formed out of the fruit of life, which comes from the flower of life, which is made by spirit. Damn. Whether you're convinced yet or not, this is the missing piece of the puzzle. It all comes down to spirit. Don't forget, this is just one of 13 informational systems that created the universe. If you want to study this on depth in your own, the best resource I'm aware of is the book The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. Alright, I'm going to wrap up with something I think you'll enjoy. Do you believe in aliens? Even after lesson 5,
That's all I have to leave it at. Do you believe in aliens? That's it. Just leave it at that. So, does that explain where the platonic solids come from? So, in one way, they were created through derivation of the flower of life, and then in the other way, they were confirmed by science when it comes to this baby right here, periodic table of elements. Why does it keep giving me a sweet preview and then I click on it and it says no? Is that it?
solids.
No soup for you. Let's see. I want to see it
Are
again.
being rediscovered. Another example is the egg of life that I showed you earlier. Hopefully that will help you to understand just how incredible and important of a discovery this truly is.
Bam. There it is. Okay, so I've referred to this a few times, and I'm sure you already know, but does everybody know what that is? Okay. We all do? Cool. Okay. The only reason I want to be 100% sure is because I refer to it a lot, and it's the most physical, grounded way, scientific way to talk about sacred geometry, is by being able to show people that it shows up in chemistry and matter. And I'm just acid etching this bottle for fun on the side. I'm going to show you guys this next video. This one's fun. I would recommend watching this whole video called Sonic Geometry. Okay, so it is a 32-minute video. Is everybody familiar with the power of the 432 hertz? Woo! Okay, this was the original tuning system by Fibonacci, right? And it's been altered throughout time. So, and this is what like classical and Baroque music was tuned to, which is proven to like heal your brain and make you smarter. Yeah, and they changed it. They've been messing with it throughout nature, or throughout time. History.
Here is where a deeper mystery begins to emerge, and to explore it, we go back to Pythagoras' other passion, geometry. It is not an exaggeration to say that Pythagoras and his disciples, geometry and math held a key to the nature of all life everywhere, and maybe it does. Let's look at the first 4 geometric shapes: the circle, triangle, square, and pentagon. In each of them are angles of degrees that, when added together, always total a specific number relative to that particular shape. For instance, if we take a triangle, the sum total of all 3 interior angles is always 180. For both the square and circle, it is 360. For a pentagon, it is 540. Now at this moment, let's step back and look at these numbers in a different way, as there seems to be something about them that reaches beyond the sum of angles. Did you notice that they happen to be in the same numerical neighborhood as tone 432? What's more, they all—
Why is that, computer?
Just like 432. As an experiment, let's take a look at the numbers found in basic geometric shapes and apply those numbers as vibrations. 180 total degrees contained in a triangle sound line.
So does everybody understand what they're doing? So the inside of this triangle is what, 45 degrees?
66.
Whole thing, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, 60 degrees, 60, which when you add them up makes 180 degrees. And then if you run a tone at 180 vibrations per second, you get a note. Got it? Yeah, that's what they don't explain, which I wish they would. They're just like, everybody knows what hertz are. That's what hertz are, is vibrations per second. Mega is like what, thousands?
Yeah.
Okay.
And here's a squares and circles 360 in cycles per second.
360 makes a note. Yeah, shapes have notes.
Perfect octave up from the triangle. What about the pentagon at 540? That sounds like a harmonic fifth with the other two. That's interesting. What are these tones? They are F sharp, and it's perfect harmonic fifth of C sharp. Let's keep going. What does a hexagon 720 sound like? Another F sharp. Here's a 7-sided septagon, which totals 900. This is an A sharp, which happens to be the note required to complete an F sharp major chord in perfect 3-part harmony.
That's fascinating.
Isn't it? And you start to understand like orchestra music, church music, like they're trying to like wake your brain up.
So, geometry is expressed by tones, and these tones just happen to create the most beautiful form of music, a perfect 3-part major chord in the key of F sharp. Is this something we've been missing for years? Is it important? To the famous philosopher and mathematician Plato, the answer would have been a resounding yes. For it was Plato who advanced the study of 2-dimensional geometry into 3-dimensional geometry, and who began to recognize that nature, whether expressed as a tone, the petal design of a flower, or the spiraling design of a seashell, seemed to follow a 3D mathematical pattern. In fact, it became an obsession of Plato to try and find the simplest 3-dimensional geometric shapes, and his quest ultimately revealed what we now call platonic solids. In essence, these forms represent the most elemental construction blocks found both in human-made and natural forms. So let's see if and how they fit into our geometry tone grid. First, there is the tetrahedron, or a 3-sided pyramid comprised of 4 interlocking triangles. As we did before, let's add up all the angles found in those 4 triangles. The answer, 720, which we have already seen is the tone F sharp.
So it still works when you 3D it.
Next, we have the cube.
All the angles.
360 squares totals 2160. What does it sound like? (2160) is a high C sharp, and as you will see later, a very interesting number for other reasons as well. Next up is the octahedron. Constructed of 8 triangles, this shape totals 1440, which is another perfect F sharp higher up the scale. The icosahedron is made up of 20 triangles, so the total number of degrees is 3600. As a tone, 3600 vibration cycles create the A sharp needed to complete yet another F sharp major chord that sounds like this. At this point, we have seen how 2- and 3-dimensional geometry can be expressed by the notes found in an F sharp major chord. Would this also be true with what is known as sacred geometry? To find out, we will first need to build a design called the germ of life, which, when repeated, goes on to reveal the seed of life, and flower of life pattern found at sacred sites all over the world. First, we start with a circle at 360 degrees, which is the familiar F sharp. We then add a second circle, bringing the total to 720, another F sharp. 3 circles totals 1080, which provides the harmonic fifth of C sharp. 4 circles is 1440, another F sharp. 5 circles totals 1800, or the A sharp needed to once again provide the harmonic third of an F sharp major now both see and hear the flower of life pattern that this tree keeps for
Yeah.
thousands of years.
Crazy.
So now with
This is so you gotta show that to people before you do your sound bath. Yeah, just that part.
So there's a guy that plays the piano and writes music for Gentry. He sees the music. So is that what he's seeing then?
Oh, yeah.
Probably?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes back to like the joke about people at Dead concerts. Like, I could see the music, like, because they're in an altered state of mind. So he just does it without chemicals. But yes, in an altered state of mind, yes, you can see vibration. Yeah. Yeah. And it shows up as perfect form. Isn't that crazy? So this would be really helpful. I mean, it would help the sound bath experience for the left brains. The right brains, it's just added information. But for the left brains, they're going to be like, well, what is this doing? And it's like, well, it's literally harmonizing your cells. The difference between light and sound is that light is absorbed and bounces off the skin, but sound goes right through you, like all the way to your core, through your bones and everything.
Because the waves transfer into you and then they pass through you as the medium instead of the air around you or the liquid around you or whatever is around you. You become the medium for that.
Precisely. And also what's interesting to think about is like sound underwater, like whales can communicate for miles. It's like, what are we made of? Like water. We're transmissible. Yeah, we're a very transmissible vessel, which also kind of brings about the whole all of Masaru Emoto's work, where what he did was he was freezing, vibrations, by exposing water to certain vibrations, you would get different patterns of like snowflakes and ice. So weird liquid crystal. That's a weird thing to think about, isn't it? If water crystallizes when it's frozen, that means it's a liquid form of crystal. And liquid or crystals hold memory. The silicon chip in your phone, like the entire birth of the information age, is based on crystal technology. And so the advantage to being human is that we can interpret and mimic frequencies and change our frequencies. So like a rock is whatever frequency it was born at, and that's the way it'll be. But we can change our frequency, our vibration, like however we want. So if I want to take on the frequency of an amethyst, I can. Or if I want to take on the frequency of the color white, like pure white light, I can do that.
My husband was talking about the difference between that element and an agent being the same thing. An element, basically in this terms is, that frequency, but an agent choose. And that's kind of where he was like, oh, agency, it can change the frequency and stuff. But it's like, and that's, it's like, yeah, we can heal ourselves and we can do all of this.
It goes back to what I was talking about right in the beginning, like, free agency, the frequency of belief.
Yeah.
Think about that. Certain thoughts have certain frequencies. Yeah, and they change our emotions, things like that. So that's where like self-discipline, self-control, like when you start talking about like the martial arts and things of that nature, meditation, whatever regimen that we take that helps us stay in like a healthy state of mind or whatever, it's more than a placebo. It's like there's measurable effects. And at the end of the day, it's like everybody has a different dream of what makes them happy or whatever. But at the end of the day, we all basically want the same thing, which is like harmony. Everybody just wants peace and harmony and happiness, and mostly to be left alone. At the end of the day. Now, how that looks is different to each person. They have their own agency as to how that looks. But yeah, at the end of the day, we all just want harmony. And it's like it shows up in our music, it shows up in our architecture, it shows up in our, if we can create it within our families. We're always trying to create harmony within our families. So it's not just a social construct. It's like we vibrate, like we connect with that frequency in nature. Like when you go out into the forest, there's no chaos, right? There's no chaotic frequencies. When you're here in the city, it's like you've got all kinds. You've got lights, you got sound, you've got radio waves and Wi-Fi's and phones and microwaves, and then you remove yourself. And like, who knows what those frequencies look like? You know, but then you go out into nature and there's like only healing frequencies, which is why we go out there. Why it's really important to take the time to go out there. Okay, so now, I think we have a clear understanding of the platonic solids. This is also why, side note, if you go to my website, this is my plug, lucidvibes.net. Bam, who's that guy? Isn't that wonderful? So it's just like all my philosophy in like one thing. So if you notice, so stone, rock is the most dense. So this is actually built in order. So if you think about the earth is the rock, right? And then the oceans are the water. And then oxygen that we breathe is the air. And then fire is the sun. And then ether is like the life force in the universe. And they're most dense to least. And they all have their strengths. They all have their functions. So, and I didn't have to alter any of the shapes. They're all in their native format. So they stayed sacred. Isn't that crazy? That's how that's chemistry right there. You take all these things in their native sacred format, and then you just plug them into each other. And now you have plastic, and now you have cars and glass. And it's crazy. Like this seriously took me out of atheism. You know, like geometry, once I started seeing order in things, I was like, I just started questioning everything. Yeah. And okay, so the Merkaba, is anybody here like familiar with this, or you've had any experience or seen it? No? Yes? No? Okay. Okay, so the way it's described is it's supposed to be this vehicle that we've all inherited. And like this is lore, right? This is folklore, but basically we're all born with this vehicle to transport ourselves to whatever dimension we want to at any one time. And supposedly it used to be active. And then something happened and we couldn't use it anymore unless we unless you train yourself through like transcendental meditation and reactivate your Merkaba. Essentially, it's like, so it translates directly to light body vehicle, Merkaba. Yeah, and there's a Hebrew translation which is different, and this is the Egyptian one. And it's two tetrahedrons. It's called the star tetrahedron, and the one facing up is male and masculine, and the one facing down is feminine. So, if you've ever astral traveled on purpose or on accident, that supposedly is your car you're supposed to be like zipping around in, which is why I made a bumper sticker that said my other vehicle is a Merkaba. Yeah, we gotta get that one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And supposedly they spin in opposite directions. And this might also be why, again, in altered states of consciousness, people see triangles moving, because for all we know, they're seeing through the veil, and they're seeing this thing around them. And now this is called the seed of life, okay? The seed of life is also known as the Genesis pattern. And it's called the Genesis pattern because this is the simplest form. Like if you were to take between this circle and this flower of life, this is considered the next stop in evolution, from the most simple to the most complex. The Genesis pattern, 7 circles, 7 chakras, 7 days of creation. It has the sacred 7 in it. And it also has the 6 petals, the Vesica Pisces in the middle. It's like in the beginning there were 6. And which is interesting because in the Marvel universe there's 6 stones. So I wonder if they took it from that. But I personally, like for me, if I was going to create a crystal grid, and I was like, I had just had some traumatic, devastating thing that happened in my life, and I was trying to create something new. Genesis means like poof, right? There's nothing, now there's something. This is what I would grid on. I would use that, a crystal grid like that, and I would use certain stones for manifestation, grounding, probably amethyst for calming, because creating things that are new is scary. You know, oftentimes you're outside of your comfort zone. I'd probably put protection crystals on it, like tourmaline, citrine for abundance and protection as well, and labradorite. Actually, you know what? Labradorite is supposed to be, if you are astral projecting, labradorite is supposed to be a protective stone for that particular thing. So this is like a journey thing. This is like a journey thing, and this is like a creation thing. And then at one point, I actually merged the two, and I called it the seed of Merkaba. So essentially, you should be able to like create anything you want, anywhere you want. And it's also the masculine and the feminine. Yeah, and again, the more complex, the higher the vibration. And then you get here and you get the Metatron's cube. The Metatron's cube is what put me on my path. 10 years ago, I woke up. It was like October. I was going through this self development course, this place called Impact, and it wasn't in class. It was at night, and I was sleeping, and I woke up, and like this thing, for lack of a better term, was like in my room, talking to me, and essentially it used its own anatomy to explain to me everything we've talked about today. Like, here are the circles, and this is how atoms work, and this is how the planets work, and this is how the universe works. It's all circles that are connected, and they're all in cycles. And it was like, people think they're not a part of this system. People think that they're acting of their own free agency, which they are. But it's like, we are in cycle. And the thing that keeps repeating that is us denying that we're in a cycle. And once we accept that we are, we become lucid. Like in lucid dreaming, when you realize it's a dream, the second you realize that you're in this system, then you actually start to gain agency. So like a shrimp can choose whatever direction it swims, but it's still in the current of the ocean. Does that make sense? So like, we do have agency, but we're not the only power in the universe. Like, there's currents, energy of all kinds. We got gravity, we've got, you know, the sun, the moon, other people's thoughts and opinions and society and beliefs and hormones. You know, our body's producing 300 chemicals. Like, there's all these forces, and we continue to believe that we're 100% under our own free agency, but yet we're not recognizing the program. And the second that we do, we can free ourselves from it.
So you recognize you're on
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. The East Australian Current. Yeah. What was it? Finding Nemo? Dude! Yeah. Yeah. And so, could you imagine, like, you're just trying to sleep, and like all of a sudden, like, and I didn't know sacred geometry was a subject. You realize this? I had no exposure to it. And like, just out of nowhere. And I mean, I had been clean for a year and a half at this point. Like, I hadn't drank. I had just got off alcohol and Oxycontin and Klonopin and morphine, right, for like a straight year. So I was clean. So I knew it wasn't that. And here I am having this like spiritual experience completely unwarranted. It wasn't like I was taking ayahuasca. I wasn't, on some journey. I was literally asleep. I wake up to this, and this thing's just like downloading information into my bones. I don't know how else to explain it. It wasn't a conversation. It was just like images, like gigabytes of data going into me. And then I was just like shaking, and I was like, I better write this down. So I get up out of bed, and I sit down at my computer, and I just start typing, in all caps, mind you, like just pages. Like I think I spewed out like 50 pages of information that night. And I hadn't written a thing since ninth grade, and I dropped out of high school, and my major, and this is like something that like, this is something I want to share with people that are embracing their purpose. Like my first apprehension was like, do you have the right guy? Like, have you seen my track record? I have a pretty good track record of just wrecking things, like destroying stuff. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm not the guy you're supposed to be delivering this message to. And it was like, yeah, anyway. So this is what you're going to do next. And it was like, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. It like gave me a map. So it gave me the information, then it gave me a life map to follow. And so the lesson that I got there was like, sometimes you'll feel like completely crazy, and you'll feel like totally unworthy, and you just got to do it anyway. You just got to have the courage to just do it. So like 2 days later, I quit my job building websites, and then I just started writing books, and about a year later I was teaching alchemy. And then a year later I was teaching sacred geometry, and that was 8 years ago. So, and then I created Soulworks Decals, which is like in 30 stores. And then I created Vibe Bottle, which is like in 100 stores. And then I went on the Teach Peace tour with Brinley and lived in an RV for a year and a half with our 3-year-old. And I was a high school dropout druggie, and now I'm like a teacher, business owner because of sacred geometry. That's a sick arc. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're following someone's lifeline, like I would, if somebody told me that and I didn't have like a graph of like what happened, I would never believe it. But that's what happened. And so it's kind of been, part of it's been like, yeah, I'm going to be a teacher and I want to share this with people because I'm passionate about it. The other half is like just trying to figure out what happened. I'm still 8 years in. I'm still trying to figure out what happened and like what it all means. So everything I've shared is what I've figured out till now. If I teach this class next year, it'll be different. There'll be more. Who knows where I'll be 10 years from now. But there's never, not once along the way, have I just been like, had any doubt. Like, yes, I've had doubt whether I should do it, but like when I'm doing it, I get it. Like I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Becoming a teacher, even though I was like the worst student ever, has been like the best thing that ever happened to me. So yeah, sometimes you just got to listen to the voices. You got to listen. You got to let yourself be crazy and brave and just do things.
I was thinking it came out that just.
What's that?
I
listen to this.
Please share. Put that
I-
on. Is that my next T-shirt?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, I basically just like started unclogging. So the thing that sent me before I even came to Sammy's like a month ago is I went up canyon to the new moon thing. Yeah, it was like
Like a Newman ceremony.
new moon ceremony. We did yoga and all this stuff. And basically I came and it was about like clearing your third eye and getting all the gunk of, Western culture being all like, that's weird, and just being like open to things. And so I came here and had been, being pulled here. And I was like, yeah, let's go. So I came here. And then anyway, after a lot of stuff, I've been hearing like tones and like no one else can hear it. And it's like just random. But I'll just like be hearing it. It sounds like a singing bowl, or sometimes it sounds like a vibrating, like a thing, but tones, and it keeps happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been like, as a group.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So I'm like, huh. Yeah. And so Sarah was saying like maybe it was like, you know, me getting like downloads or something, you know, that I like haven't translated yet or that haven't, you know, but I'm like tuned into fear, that kind of thing and stuff because it's very like just yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually like two things that I can hear and I'm just like no one else can hear that. Like
Mm-hmm.
and like I'll be with my husband or like my friends or different things and I'm like actually when I'll ask them and it's not like a super high thing, like it's not because they can't hear that high of a pitch, it's just like different things.
No, I mean it's in the realm of clairaudience. Have you heard that term before? Yeah. Yeah. And so I very rarely have clairaudience. I've had clairaudience seriously, like I can count on one hand like 3 times that I've had clair, and I remember those messages. That's how strong those were. Some people are clairvoyant, right? They see. Some people are clairsentient. They feel. Some people are claircognizant, and some are clairaudient. And we have abilities to have them all, but it is a primary usually. Mine is claircognizance. So I will see an entire movie like play out. And sometimes it's just in my dream state. And sometimes it's like as I stand here, like 5 years from now, I can see like how these would be painted and how the walls would be different, stuff like that. But they typically in society we call those people visionaries. But there's no like term for that when you're, audience. But it's not something like if you're not hurting anybody, it's not hurting you. Like why not embrace it? You know. Yeah, and then sometimes it'll show up at times like you're supposed to. It's like, oh, this is when you need to pay attention right now. Like this person or this situation or this opportunity, this is for you, and this is why, like you're getting this message right now. Like I see like whenever I'm doubting my path, like I'll have a hawk like fly over my car, and not just over the freeway, but like on the way here, like flew over my car. So the way that and this is like in shamanism, these are called omens, right? And so the way I explain omens are simple. It's like, you know how to get to Vegas, right? It's straight line, right? You just follow the road. But isn't it nice to have a sign every 100 miles? To just know you're not lost, like, you could feel, but it's real comforting. So I look at those things as those are like little breadcrumbs from the universe that just kind of remind you that you're on the right path. Stuff like that. Like I said, if you're not hurting anybody, then who cares? Costs nothing. And like at the end of the day, if you think about it, genius is just like all that happened was some completely insane person learned how to funnel their insanity into something positive. That's all genius really is. And it's like when it gets out of the bag and it's just like all over, like there's no form to it, then that's when it becomes harmful. But like when you can hone it and utilize it, then it's like it can become fuel for creativity and art, and can take you places that nobody will go. You'll make things that nobody ever thought of.
Well, it's interesting too because what's been just creating this spiritually minded music. Yeah. So why wouldn't you be getting downloads of the tones that would work and create these kinds of things? Yeah. I'm starting to write music that has to do with and all this. And so yeah, I think that's very makes sense. And learning about this is amazing.
You have fun?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Some people find it overwhelming.
It is.
It is, huh? A little bit.
But in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Okay, good.
It's kind of like dipping your toe in to lava.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I need more of that, and I don't want it at the same time.
But I gotta know.
Yeah. What's down there? It's true.
I know there's more.
Yeah.
Ow.
Uh-huh.
Ow. Okay.
I'm still here, but rest of me's fine. Amen to that. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, it is. It is like, I mean, and to your guys' credit, I mean, you're what took me the better part of a decade, to discover. Like some of these lessons we've talked about, they took me a year to figure out. And like you got it in a 2-minute, Cliff Notes version. So I get it. It's a lot. And the good news is it's recorded, right? You don't have to remember it all. There's most likely 1 or 2 messages in every class that is for you. And that's like the one that'll resonate that you won't forget. You won't have to try to remember it. And then there's other things where you'll get it, like you'll hear it now, and like 5 years later, it'll show, and you'll be like, oh, damn. Like, that's a self-fulfilling truth. Like the things I share, I try to stick to things that have proved themselves to me over time and time again. If I don't know it's absolutely true, I'll pose it as a theory. I'll be like, theoretically, I think this, but so I never want to just share a theory as fact, because a lot of people do that on the internet. Flat earthers, for starters. So, but yeah, it's definitely like, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is an introductory class. We haven't gone into crystal gridding. We haven't gone out to the desert and made grids. We haven't built a garden in sacred geometry. We haven't, right here, this is like literally a map to life right here. If you want to start, this is definitely more of like a New Year's resolution thing, but if you want to create harmony in these different sections of your life, this is a good place to start. And the seed of life is a great place, is a great grid or great energy, great symbol to use to start a new life type of thing. So the seed of life could be used as a self-development class, like an entire class. And the Metatron's Cube is like a how you transcend karma course. That could be a 6-week course right there. So, like I'm saying, like we are barely touching the surface right now. So next time when we get together, we'll already know a lot of these terms, and we'll know a lot of why things are, and we can skip over that and we can get straight into practice and how to actually use sacred geometry as a philosophy, as a map, literally a map for life. So I figure if geometry is good enough for the creator, it's probably good enough for us. Probably. And we'll talk about aliens. Do you have any more questions? That's a real crop circle. Yep. Yep.
I was going to bring up crop circles earlier, but I was like, I don't know if that's like, I was like, I believe it. And crop circles are one of the things with Emoto, Professor.
Emoto.
Yep. He showed him a picture of crop circles and the formation that the water turned into looked like a UFO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so some of them are fake, but some of them are real, like completely unexplainable. And I think they come from the inside of the earth. That's my theory. Yeah, something like that. Like if you wanted to communicate and you can't send a radio signal, it'd be easier to send it like a sound or magnetic wave through like solid rock. And it's like, again, if they send up a flag or a book, we're going to fight over it. But if they send up shapes, then it's something we don't fight over. It's the one like universal, like math and geometry is like the one universal language that is the same in every language. So it would make sense that if, right, yeah, it's the same on Mars, it's the same in the Orion's belt. Never mind. There's an exception to every rule. Yeah, but that's, if for some reason they have evolved way past like verbal communication because the bandwidth is too low. You know, to be able to explain anything takes so long, or with our thumbs, the bandwidth is so low. But, you know, if even humans 10,000 years from now, right? Say we make it that far, it would serve us to communicate like dolphins, like through sonic waves, like be able to take an entire concept. Like for me to take this whole class and send it to you, like in a 3-second wave, yeah, and you could just download it, that would make more sense. And it would most likely show up in sections and subcompartments and things like that. It would come over as a structure. So it makes sense that they're sending us entire, you know, libraries of information in geometry. Like take hieroglyphics, you know, like the Egyptians and Mayans started moving towards that. They started getting out of words and into pictures because this one thing can explain an entire story. So like you can't just like drop the Library of Congress on someone's lawn, you know, but if you gave them something like that, or the Flower of Life. Have you seen what is it? Temple of Osiris. Yeah, have you seen this? The Abydos. So the Flower of Life, or yeah, the Temple of Abydos.
Temple of Abydos or Temple of Osiris?
Abydos. I got it wrong. Trying to find. Oh wait, let's see. I'll go into here. So, yeah. So it's actually burned. It's not carved into the Temple of Abydos, into one of the walls. It's burned into the atoms, and they don't get how they did it. Like a laser or a sound tool. Yeah. Like into the atomic structure. And this is the oldest. It's like the oldest temple. It's like 5,500 years old or something. So, like, if you were trying to communicate with the human race, like, hey guys, stop being a-holes. You're all one. You know, like, don't destroy yourselves because, yeah, you think you're separate, but you're not. Like, you are actually one consciousness. It's been divided into 8 billion people, and you're just experiencing yourself. It's like, how do you explain that? You know, no book can put that into simple terms. You can't take that much information and put it into paper. So it's like you would send it as a program, you know, as a geometry. So that's level 2 stuff. We'll get into that. So I'm gonna wash this off. Do you guys have any more questions for now? We're good. So many. Okay. Well, good, because I always leave them wanting more, right? And then don't forget. Oh, and don't forget, the Flower of Life is actually, it shows up on like in 14 different countries, by the way. So it's in China, it's in Turkey, it's in Europe, it's everywhere. And what's funny is that it's called the same thing in every single place. Everybody calls it the same thing. Yeah, as if it came from an outside source. Because had they shared it, it would have changed names. Just like chi, like chi, right? So chi is energy. But in China, but in Japan, it's ki. And then in East India, it's prana. And then they called it tachyon energy or ether. So we can't, or kundalini, like we can't agree on anything, even at life force energy. But the Flower of Life is has the same name on every continent. Yeah. It's separated by thousands of miles. No wireless communication, no copying, pasting, like as if it came from an outside source. So I swear it was a message. It had to be a message like sent to us. Go to my website. That's my plug. Subscribe to my top podcast. This is where I do all the plugs.
So
I'm
go to
staring-
come down to Sammy's Spot Spanish Fork.
I'm staring at your image and I want to know why it's not the icosahedron. Why
The
are they
dodecahedron.
all in fractured planes except
This guy?
that guy?
That's a good question. That one, there's no good reason. I just liked it.
That's fine. That's a great reason.
That's the
If you
truth.
liked it.
Yeah.
That's a great reason.
I, you know what actually happened? So when I made, see this logo, the Lucid, see how I actually used it to make the C? Yeah, it was like when I changed it, they stayed there and I just spun it on its side and then like reassembled it. But that's a good question. I didn't even notice that. See how detail oriented this guy is. That's why I love this class.
You pulled it up and I went, ah!
Wait a
things
s-
just not like
does it
that.
belong here? Yep.
And I haven't
Now
been
I
able to
got.
stop
Now I
staring-
might change it.
I haven't been able to stop staring at it.
Now I
since
might not
then,
change it.
so-
I'm either gonna change this one to those, or I'm gonna change those to this one. I haven't decided yet. We'll see. Yeah, that was like, you know, how do you include all those things? And you know what was really cool? You know, kind of how this translated over. So Vibe Bottle was just one thing, right? It was just water. So that would be this symbol. But then I got into crystals and apparel and education. And so Vibe Bottle was actually a ceiling I couldn't break through. So the fact that it like went the way it did was a absolute blessing because Lucid freed me to just like, now it's like I'm just a kid in a candy store. Any one day of the week, I'm not just thinking about glass bottles. I'm like, oh, I'm going to talk about apparel today. I'm going to talk about incense today. Now I'm going to do some education. Now I'm going to, you know, like, and without having 5 separate companies and being scattered. I have one company that has unlimited possibilities to it. It's really freaking cool. So that's where, like, you know, bottles, apparels, videos, and I'm just going to keep building on this. And then of course my podcast is Anchor, what is it? Anchor FM, anchor.fm/mixed meta. And so it's the idea, it's called mixed metaphysics, like mixed martial arts. They created martial arts. They created mixed martial arts trying to figure out which one was the best. And they couldn't find one style that had everything. So people started to mix them. That's how mixed martial arts came about. I found the same thing with philosophy. I couldn't find one system of belief that had everything. So I just started copying and pasting the things that I liked and leaving out the things that I didn't. Like I have a firm belief. I respect whatever you believe in. As long as your faith doesn't tell you to go out and hurt people, you know, then we're good. If your faith does, then you should switch brands. What, yeah, you know, and other than that, I respect it. So this is sort of like, I'm just kind of building the groundwork right now with the first 10 episodes. And then the idea is I'm going to go out and I'm going to interview people inside of different faiths that I don't know anything about and I want to learn. And then again, it'll just like free me to go and learn new stuff. So like I was talking about seeking and being on a journey. Yeah, I want to learn about stuff I don't know about. So yeah, that's on anchor.fm/mixed meta. And just think of the people I could interview. I mean, so many cool people. It's gonna be way fun. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap this up. We did go over time. Sorry about that. Hope that's cool. I'm gonna wash this off, show you guys this thing, and then we'll just do like we'll hug it out and we'll have a good night. Sound good? All right. You're so welcome. All right, Zoom.
So same time next week, right?
That's right, bro. We're gonna do it again. And that concludes my class from last night. Thanks for tuning in. Check out my website, lucidvibes.net, LUCID, V as in Victor, IBES.net. S.net. I had to think about that for a sec. Every class is different. Every sacred geometry class is different. I'm discovering new things. People ask different questions. So even if you listen to this and you come to the next class, I guarantee you'll hear something or learn something new. Check out my podcast, anchor.fm/mixed meta. You can find Lucid products, Peacemaker bottles in lots of stores across the US and Canada. Also, we will be launching Dosha CBD. It's already a company, but we will be introducing it on the website soon, so check that out. Super high quality CBD made by great people. Also featuring Gaia's Gift biophotonic bottles. It's hard to say. Biophotonic bottles. And of course, our t-shirt line will be coming out this week as well. So check us out, share us, and don't miss my next class. Love you guys. Peacemaker out.